The following audio was taken from Chapter 6, Moonraker, Cards with a Stranger.
"Every penny you've got," said Drax cheerfully. "How much can you afford?"
"I'll tell you when there's none left," said Bond. He suddenly decided to be ruthless. "I'm told that 5 and 5 is your limit. Let's play for that." Almost before the words were out of his mouth, he regretted them. £50, 100, £500 side bets. 4 bad rubbers would be double his income for a year. If something went wrong, he'd look pretty stupid. He'd have to borrow money from M, and M wasn't a particularly rich man. Suddenly, he saw that this ridiculous game might end in a very nasty mess. He felt the prickle of sweat on his forehead. That damned Benizidrin. And for him, of all people, to allow himself to be needled by a blustering, loud-mouthed bastard like Drax. And he wasn't even on a job. The whole evening was a bit of a social pantomime. That meant less than nothing to him. Even M had only been dragged into it by chance. And all of a sudden, he'd let himself be swept up into a duel with this multimillionaire. Into a gamble for literally all Bond possessed. For the simple reason that the man had got filthy rich manners and he'd wanted to teach him a lesson. And supposing that the lesson didn't come off, Bond cursed himself for an impulse that earlier in the day would have seemed unthinkable. Champagne and Benadryl. Never again. Drax was looking at him in a sarcastic disbelief. He turned to M, who was still unconsideredly shuffling the cards. "I suppose your guest is good for his commitments," he said, unforgivably. Bond saw the blood rush up M's neck into his face. M paused for an instant in his shuffling. When he continued, Bond noticed that his hands were quite calm. M looked up and took the cheroot very deliberately out from between his teeth. His voice was perfectly controlled. "If you mean, am I good for my guest commitments?" he said scoldily. "The answer is yes." He cut the cards to Drax with his left hand, and with his right knocked the ash off his cheroot into the copper ashtray in the corner of the table. Bond heard the faint hiss as the burning ash hit the water. Drax squinted sideways at M. He picked up the cards. Of course," he said hastily. "I didn't mean it." He left the sentence unfinished and turned to Bond. "Right then," he said, looking rather curiously at Bond. 5 and 5, it is, Mayor." He turned to his partner. "How much would you like to take? There's 6 and 6 to cut up," Mayor said. 1 and 1's enough for me, Hugger," said Mayor apologetically. "Unless you'd like me to take some more." He looked anxiously at his partner. "Of course not," said Drax. "I like a hard game. Never get enough on generally." Now then, he started a deal. "Off we go." And suddenly Bond didn't care about the high stakes. All he wanted to do was to give his hairy ape the lesson of his life. Give him a shock which would make him remember this evening forever. Remember Bond. Remember M. Remember this evening forever. Remember Bond. Remember M. The last time he would cheat at blades. Remember the time of day. The weather outside. What he had for dinner. For all its importance, Bond had forgotten the Moonraker. This was a private affair between two men.